Are we live?
We're
We're
live.
officially live? 1,000,000%? All right, baby, here we go. Cody, Sperber, the Clever Investor here. I am in the studio, and we're about to have a great conversation about the 6 major terms of a real estate contract. I got my boy Aaron behind the camera. He's normally the guy that's filming, so he'll be my question asker. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Aaron, get over here real quick. This is Aaron, everybody, just in case you ever wanted to know. See, I got that young, youthful, millennial enthusiasm to teach us old guys how YouTube actually works, right?
Yeah, so I'll be back there if you guys have any questions.
Oh, hold on, get over here. I'm not done yet. Aaron. For those of you that don't know Aaron, his real name is Aaron. Aaron loves long walks on the beach, drifting cool cars. His dream car is a Nissan GTR. So I told him, listen, I want to dominate YouTube. I want to have a lot of fun with YouTube. I want you to bring your youthful enthusiasm, but I'm going to call you Aaron until what happens? One of 3 things.
I buy the GTR, we hit half a million?
Yeah.
Yeah, $500,000 on YouTube, or
1 year and 1 day.
Oh yeah, 1 year and 1 day.
All right, so one of 3 things has to happen before I call him Aaron. So since he started, it's been Aaron around the office. But anyways, he's got to buy his dream car. So I'm trying to teach him how to become successful at that level where he can just go and get that bad boy. Or 1 year, 1 day with me, or we hit 500,000 subscribers. So please subscribe.
Please hurry up on that.
Yeah, please. All right,
Help
Aaron, you're out of here. You're hogging the whole video. All right, so listen, we're going to talk about the 6 main terms of a real estate contract. When I was brand new in the business, paperwork was scary. I was overwhelmed. I remember, and I'm an analytical person, and for all my analytical people that like to have everything perfect, and they're scared to move forward without everything lining up, and and I mean everything. I had to really understand my paperwork. I had the best business card, the best logo, and the best website, and all this stuff had to be perfect before I felt confident and comfortable to move forward, which is completely ridiculous in this business. Huge waste of time I spent on the dumbest stuff. But paperwork was one of those ones that I got really hung up on, and I remember stressing out about it a lot because I didn't understand the legal side of the paperwork. And when you're doing creative real estate investing, and I've used the phrase transactional engineer with you guys before, what that really means and why creative real estate investing works is basically having the ability to manipulate the terms of a real estate contract. And so you need to know what all those terms are, and some of them you already know, like everybody wants to get and talk about price and negotiate the price that they want. But there are actually 5 other pretty important terms that you can use as leverage, and as price goes up or down, the other terms go up or down. And so in this video, I want to explain what those terms are. We never want you to get stuck in a bad deal. We never want you to get stuck in a legal issue because you didn't understand how to fill the paperwork out correctly. I want you to understand that paperwork is actually quite simple. There's 2 types of contracts we use, especially when wholesaling real estate or doing creative real estate investing. There is investor-friendly paperwork, right? And that means you went to an attorney and you had them create some a contract package for you. What are we working on?
I just gotta set this down a little bit. Like
It's bothering you?
Yeah, it's bothering me. Okay, and we are good.
All right, cool. Do we have anybody on? A couple people?
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
33.
Hey, 33 people. That's great. Hey, for only being a month into YouTube, that's pretty good. So this is what my investor-friendly paperwork looks like. I went to a real estate attorney, and this has evolved over the years, all right? This has become a really good ironclad investor-friendly contract. This is the purchase and sale agreement for the buy side of my transaction. So you have the acquisition side or the buy side, and then you have the disposition side or the sale side. The buy side's where I'm working with the motivated seller. So I show up and they've either responded to one of my ads or I've gone out and found them. Maybe I'm farming an area. And we're now talking about me, the real estate investor, who is a cash buyer, I'm going to buy their house from them at some price that we negotiate. And a lot of times, if I can, I would prefer to use my investor-friendly purchase and sale agreement. The reason I like this paperwork over the other type of paperwork, which is a standard AAR contract, which is the Association of Realtor contract. Here in Arizona, it's the Arizona Association of Realtor contract. Every state has realtor paperwork that the realtors use. And it's the reason I like the investor-friendly paperwork is because the terms of this contract, right out of the gate, are already leaning towards me, the investor. And I'll get to what that means here in a minute. Now, when I first got into the business, I didn't understand all the terms of the contract. I didn't understand what the language meant. And I was really nervous and scared, frankly, to go out and sit down with the motivated seller and say, hey, I want to buy your house for cash. And then when they say yes, fill the paperwork out in front of them or with them. That gave me a lot of anxiety, and the way to fix that is to master your paperwork. Practice filling it out. If you don't already have investor-friendly paperwork, I give all of our contracts away with my Fast Track Profit system. I'll maybe even hook you guys up at the end of this video and give you one of my contracts for free. But it's important that you get really good paperwork and you understand how to fill it out. So I went and I hired an attorney, a local real estate attorney. I said, I want an investor set of contracts. And the attorney said, great, I'll set you up with that. And then the attorney sent me a bill for $2,300, which sucked. But I paid it because I didn't know any better, and I didn't know that you could just do Cody Sperber's Fast Track system for $297 and get all the contracts, forms, and 40 hours of video training. So we give this to our students, and you can see I have a little disclaimer on there because I'm not a real estate attorney, and I'm not getting in legal trouble for getting you paperwork. But this is the exact paperwork I've used to close over 1,000 deals. And so I want to go over the 6 main terms up on this whiteboard. But it's a 6-page contract, right? So it's front and back, 6 pages. And it's highlighted because with your acquisition paperwork, you're actually going to have multiple versions of it. This is the master copy of all 3 versions. But we also have them broken out into version 1, which is you're buying a house that's vacant. And then version 2 is you're buying a house that's occupied with a tenant, and version 3 is you're buying a house that's occupied with the homeowner in it. This has all 3 versions, and you can see that my printer ran out of yellow ink, but there's supposed to be some yellow areas on here where the printer ran out of ink. And it's like, use this if the property is vacant. Otherwise, we would delete this paragraph. And so what I've done is I give you guys this with our Fast Track Profit System course. And so I give you the master copy and then all 3 copies without the master language all in it. And so whenever I get a wholesale deal and I'm about to go out on a seller with a appointment with the motivated seller, I'll bring whatever contract matches the situation. So if the situation is it's tenanted with or occupied with the tenant, I'll bring that paperwork. Does that make sense? So anyway, let's go over the 6 main terms. And if you have any questions, Ron's gonna belt them out to us. That way I make sure that you don't leave here without having clarity and confidence of how to start. This is the foundation for becoming a transactional engineer. So obviously the first term that we all pretty much get focused on, and I see new real estate investors making this mistake all the time, they zero right in on this first term. And the first term is price. All right? Price. We all want to negotiate price, and it's pretty much on a real estate purchase and sale agreement, whether you're using investor-friendly paperwork or the standard realtor paperwork. Price is normally one of the first terms that you're going to put in. So the contract kind of looks like this, and it basically says who the contract is between. It's between you and the seller, all right? What the address of the property is, and I like to put the assessor's parcel number also on there, and then the first term is price, all right? So price goes right out of the gate. If I'm buying it for $100,000, I would put purchase price to be $100,000 in there. And that leads me perfectly into the second term, which is earnest deposit. You ever heard that phrase before? Earnest deposit. Now, in the United States, the way our contract law works, in order for a contract to become valid, it needs to be in writing. Both parties need to be of sound mind, which means that I can't get you all liquored up and then have you sign a contract. You can't be on drugs. You're supposed to be of legal age to be able to sign the contract.
Do the contracts work differently if somebody's in a different country?
If you're in a different country, this probably is going to work a little differently, but not a tremendous amount, right? Because contracts are contracts. Basically, all a contract is a meeting of the minds and clarity on what the deal is between two parties. So, for instance, I could, if I wanted to, write down on a napkin our agreement, you sign it and I sign it, and boom, we have a contract. I could literally take that napkin to my closing agent and hand it to them, and they'd be like, what's this? And I'd be like, that's the contract between me and the seller. And they'd be like, okay, I guess. And they'd probably take the contract or the napkin and draft up a document that's more official, but I've done it literally where I wrote on a napkin and got the seller to sign it because I didn't have my paperwork with me, and I wasn't going to lose the mojo, right? The seller was at a place where they were ready to sign. I was like, boom, napkin, sign. So all a contract is our agreement between the two parties. And so in your country it might be a little different, but here in the U.S., you have to be of legal age, sound mind, it has to be in writing, and there has to be what's called consideration passed. Consideration is what makes kind of the contract official. It is either money, right? You're going to sell me the house, here's the terms of our agreement, and I'm going to put down a certain amount of money as an earnest deposit. That earnest deposit, aka consideration, is now what has transferred a value. You're giving me the property based on these terms, and I'm going to pay you this price, and I'm going to put up, say, $10, $100, $1,000, or $20,000, whatever we agree on as an earnest deposit. All right? Now, one of the most common questions I get asked all the time is, how much, Cody, do you put down for earnest deposits? I've heard that you can put as little as $10 down. And it's true, you can, and I have done that in the past. I don't recommend doing that, but you can do that. I recommend you put down whatever earnest deposit either you can afford to put down and is common for the area and common for the price point, or you use earnest deposit as leverage to get the deal. Let me explain. If everybody in your area is putting up $500 on average for earnest deposit, put up $500. If everybody's putting down $100, put down $100. If they're all putting $1,000, put $1,000. Put whatever you can afford to put down. And the cool thing about creative real estate investing is if you structure your paperwork correctly, you're not going to be at risk to losing that earnest deposit. As the buyer, you have the right to back out of a contract as long as the contract is written correctly, and your worst case scenario is you lose your earnest deposit. Your best case scenario is you don't lose your earnest deposit and you get it back. It all depends on the language in your contract and how you set it up from the beginning. So, for instance, sometimes I use earnest deposit as leverage to get the deal, to get the yes. Let's say there's multiple offers going in on a house that's hot in a hot area. Everybody else is putting up $500 or $1,000. I might come with $5,000, right? Which shows the seller that I'm here to play and I'm serious. That small twist might get me the deal. Now, what maybe they understand, maybe they don't understand, is that my earnest deposit is fully refundable back to me as long as I have term number 3, which is our escape clause. All right, an escape clause. An escape clause is a clause in the contract that allows you to back out of the deal and get your earnest deposit back. So let me ask you something. What would be a great escape clause? Subject to partner's approval, maybe? Okay, that's a decent one. Let's go with one that's a little bit more common. This escape clause that I like to use is my inspection period. Inspection period. So it's pretty common for you to have an inspection on a house, even if you're buying it for cash, right? Because you want to make sure that the unseen things are still, like, you know what those unseen things are, and you're still aware of what's going on. Foundational issues, major termite issues, or mold issues, sewer issues, like some of the bigger structural things. And a lot of times I use an inspection period, even though I'm not going to ask for any repairs to be made. I'll use my inspection period as my shopping period once I get a deal under contract to shop it around to find a buyer for it. I'll also use my inspection period as my escape clause to be able to back out of the deal and get my earnest deposit back. So, there's a couple different ways to structure a really good escape clause. And my escape clause language in here is really creative, because the way I structure it is I basically say the buyer, me, has the right to inspect the property and make a judgment based on my findings of whether or not I want to move forward with the property, and I have up until the day before close of escrow to make that choice. So I have language in there that allows me the entire closing period all the way up. So if I get it under contract today and it's a 15-day close, I have 14 days to back out of the deal up until the day before close of escrow. If it's a 30-day close, I'll have 29 days. I hope that's making sense. But it's up to me to back out of the deal, and I get my earnest deposit back. Now, some sellers are a little bit more savvy, and they're like, whoa, I don't want you to have the entire closing period be your inspection period. And I'd say, oh, okay, that's just standard for my company when we buy properties. How about this? Why don't we go to a 15-day business day inspection period? And a lot of times I can get that approved. 15 business day inspection period. And what I did there, and the difference between 15-day inspection and 15 business day inspection, is I've included weekends. And by just adding the words business day, it extends out my inspection period. So whether it's a 10 business day inspection period or 15 business day inspection period, a lot of times if they're savvy and they catch me with my entire closing period being the inspection period, I'll just move it to business days and it'll still buy me enough time. All right, so that's my escape clause. The next term is where closing occurs. Where closing occurs. So, who gets to choose where your closing occurs? Does the buyer or the seller? In a real estate deal, a lot of times the buyer gets to choose where they want to close escrow, right? The buyer chooses. And so, us as the investor, we want to choose an investor-friendly closing agent where we're going to close the deal, because we know on the back end we're either going to wholesale it using an assignment, wholesale it using a double close. We might bring in private money or some creative way to fund the deal and actually take it down. We might be backing out of the deal, right? We don't know, but we need a closing agent. In some states, you close with an attorney. In some states, you close with a title company. But you want them to be investor friendly, which means that they give you a discount on closing fees. They understand that you're going to do lots of business with them. That's why they're doing that. They understand the game, they understand what wholesaling is and assignments are and double closes are, and as long as everything's disclosed properly, they're cool with all of that. They also need to understand what transactional funding is, right? Because some states like Ohio, they don't want you doing assignments, and they're really stringent on how wholesaling goes down. So a lot of times in Ohio, we teach our students how to use private money or transactional funding to actually close the deal. And in another video, we can go deeper in how wholesaling works and the mechanics of all that. But you want to be able to choose where you're going to close with. So then the next common question I get, well, on the acquisition, if I get to choose as the buyer, when I go to wholesale it, do I get to choose again? Or is it now the cash buyer's ability to choose? And what I'll say to that is, I like to tell my cash buyers how to do business with me. Because I'm serving up a deal on a silver platter to them, a lot of times I just say, hey, look, if you want to buy a house from me, you got to use the same closing agent that I opened escrow with, because they already have escrow opened. Sometimes the buyer's like, no way, I won't do that. I want to use my own closing agent, at which point I'll do half the transaction with my closing agent and half the transaction with theirs. And sometimes they're like, I don't care, that's fine, and they'll just use my closing agent to close. All right, so where closing occurs. Term number 5 is who pays closing costs. Who pays the closing cost? Right? Think about this. If part of my pitch as an investor is, hey, listen, there's a lot of benefits of working with somebody like me and my wife, right? We pay cash. We close on a date of your choice. I'm going to cover all the closing costs. So whatever number we negotiate, that's going to be a net number to you after you pay off your liens and encumbrances, right? So I'll pay the closing cost. You don't have to pay any commissions. You don't have to make any repairs. It's going to be a super fast, simple, fun, friendly, flexible transaction. That's why there's a lot of benefits of working with us versus going through a real estate agent. And so I tell them I'm going to pay the closing cost. And a lot of investors offer to pay closing costs if they're buying a house at a discount. But let's say you're in the middle of a negotiation. You've already told them that one of the benefits of working with you is that you will pay closing costs. Because in a normal transaction, it's 50-50. They pay the seller side and you pay the buyer side of closing costs. And if you don't know what closing costs are, I highly recommend that you Google it, look it up, or go down and talk to your closing agent and say, hey, I want you to mock up a transaction for me. What would a $100,000 house look like if I bought it or sold it for cash? What would all the closing costs? Break them out line by line and give me what they are. It's things like title and escrow fees, recording fees, sometimes it's even like courier fees. There's all these like fees in a closing. And once you see it all line itemed out, you can start to understand, okay, so if I'm offering to pay closing costs on a $100,000 cash transaction on a house, that's like $3,200 worth of closing costs. Okay, so now I have it in my head. I'm offering them $100,000, but I'm really buying the house for $103,000. You get what I'm saying? So you got to cover the closing costs on top of whatever the acquisition price is. So let's say I offer to pay closing costs, and then through the negotiation, they're not coming down low enough on price. I'll use closing costs as leverage, and I'll start backpedaling because it's either price or terms, right? If they want the price, they got to be flexible on the terms. If they're giving me the price I want, I got to be more flexible on the terms. So like, if they give me my price, I'll cover closing costs. If they don't give me my price, I start backpedaling and saying, hey, listen, let me step outside, let me talk to my business partner, and let me see if I can get them on board with what you're asking for the house. And I step outside, I have a conversation, I come back in, I say, hey, great news. I also got some bad news, but I got great news too. We're really close to making a deal work, and I think that this is going to be great for you. We're going to be able to close this when you need the money. We're going to get it to you. It's going to be super easy transaction. You're not going to have to make any repairs, but here's my thing. It's going to take us a little bit more time to put our money together because you're not budging on your price. So if we give you this price, I know earlier I said that I can close by Friday, but if you give me an extra week, then that would allow me to move some money around. And can we go back to the original plan of you pay your half of the closing cost and I'll pay mine? Or you cover the closing cost and I'll give you the price you want. So right there in that example, I just pulled 2 term levers in order to keep price where they want it. I extended out my closing date by a week, and I got them back on board with paying their half of the closing cost. So now I only have, in a $3,000 closing cost, they are absorbing $1,500 and I'm absorbing $1,500. Does that make sense? So this is why you got to understand the other terms so you can be playful with them. All right, who pays closing cost? Last one is 6, and this is date of closing, and that's what I just talked about. A lot of times when we show up, we're like, listen, we're fast. I could close a deal within 7 to 10 business days, right? And then we start talking. I learn more about their situation. I learn more about the property, and as I'm getting information fed to me, all of a sudden I'm realizing, hey, I need to extend out my closing date. So as I'm negotiating a lot of times, I'll give them a little bit more for the house as long as they'll extend out my closing date back to 15, 20, 30 days. I've extended out a closing date to 60 days. And the reason you want the farther out, the better for you, especially if you're wholesaling, because that's going to give you time to take this signed contract around town and go, hey, anybody want this smoking hot off-market deal? This house is worth $200,000, needs about $30,000 worth of work. I have it available to purchase for cash for $110,000. Who wants this? And what happens is it gives me enough time with my inspection period and my closing period pushed out. I have time to shop the contract and try to find the real cash buyer, which is the landlord or the rehabber. Yep.
Do you still negotiate the price including closing costs even when the seller is financing?
If the seller is doing a seller carryback, I'm guessing. So sometimes we show up at a house and the seller owns the house free and clear. And they are going to act as the bank for us, and we're going to be able to buy the house from them, but they're going to carry the loan. All right? Instead of, normally we would have to go to a bank and get a loan, or we would just get a house under contract and then wholesale it out to somebody who wants it. In this scenario, they're saying, hey, the seller, maybe they're not super motivated to sell at a really big discount, which wholesaling's out the door. But maybe it's a great rental property for your portfolio. So you show up and the seller's like, hey, I'll be the bank. I'll finance you. I own the house free and clear. Let's work out an agreement. At which time I would say, go back to the drawing board, and I would say, go back to traditional closing cost and have them pay their half and you pay your half. But it's all, the terms of a deal are all negotiable. If they give you a better price, then maybe they roll closing costs into it. See what I'm saying? Like, every scenario would be different. And that's kind of a tough one right there, because it's going to be rare that you're going to show up after doing a whole entire presentation and have them all of a sudden go, you know what, without you knowing, you know what, I'm just going to I'll offer you seller financing. That's not normally how it works. Normally what happens is you learn that a long time before you get into the meat and potatoes of negotiating price or terms, and you'll know going in, and you'll reshift your whole presentation to go after them for a seller carry.
He says thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So here's the big lesson in all of this, and we got to go because this video is starting to get a little long. Number one, you want to master your paperwork. I recommend getting a really good, solid contract. You're going to want multiple versions of it, right? You're going to want a purchase and sale agreement for the acquisition. You're going to want a purchase and sale agreement for the disposition, because you want the terms to lean in your direction right out of the gate. You can always change them, right? Sometimes I fill out a contract with the seller and I got cross-outs and initials everywhere, and we'll write in the margins. Remember, a contract is just the agreement that you guys agree to. There's no, that's what makes creative real estate so fun. You can manipulate all the terms of this contract. Maybe they say, you know what, Cody, I don't like this sentence in here. I'm not going to leave the property in broom swept condition. I'm walking out with all my junk in there, and that's what you told me we would do. And now I'm reading in this contract, that you want me to sweep the property. Oh, hey, no problem, sir. Let me go ahead and, that's in our standard template. Let me just cross that out, cross that out, cross that out, cross that out. Just initial, boom. You happy? Oh, good, perfect. Let's do this deal. Right? So you want to learn how to master your paperwork. You're going to want to have the right paperwork so you don't get in legal trouble. Understand that there's two types of paperwork. There's the creative paperwork from an attorney, and then there's the standard realtor paperwork. And there's also, when wholesaling, 3 major contracts. There's a buy-side contract, a sell-side contract, and an assignment form contract. And in another video, I'll break down my assignment form, which is super creative. I have clauses and things in there that help protect me, the wholesaler, and make sure that I always remain in control, because at the end of the day, creative real estate investing is all about control. With the right paperwork, you don't have to actually buy the property to control it. When you fill this out with the seller, you gain what's called equitable interest in the property. And as long as this is executed correctly, you control their real estate. They can't sell it out from underneath you. They can't push you out of the deal. You as the buyer have the right to back out of this, but they as the seller can't just back out of a contract once they sign it with you, right? If they do, you can actually sue for specific performance and force the sale if you want. All right, so as the buyer, you got a lot of flexibility. As the seller, you don't, right? And you can hold their feet to the fire. And if they don't do it, you can file what's called a lis pendens on the property and actually cloud their title and force the sale. All right, so master your paperwork. All right, that was a lot on this video. I know paperwork's not the most exciting lesson in the whole world, but I think it's super, super important that you memorize the 6 terms. You learn how to manipulate those terms and realize everything's flexible. It's price, terms, price, terms. And the more you start thinking like a creative investor, like a transactional engineer, the more money you will make. All right. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing to my YouTube channel. Please like this video, share it with another investor buddy of yours. Feel free to post it on other social platforms if you want as you share it. I want to build the strongest community in the game of like-minded real estate entrepreneurs, and I'm doing this for free for you guys in hopes that we can build a better relationship and you'll engage with my videos. So leave me a comment down below what else you would like to see. I hope you got some value from this. Until next time, I'm Cody Sperber, the Clever Investor, signing off for now. Take care, comb your hair. Sperber out.